Welcome to episode 2 of the Golden Triangle cruise that we took this summer, 2024, on the Erie HOBO houseboat. Just to refresh, what is the Golden Triangle cruise? That is going from Montreal, Quebec, up the Ottawa River to Ottawa, Ontario, the capital of Canada, and then down the Rideau Canal system, historic system, to Kingston, Ontario, then down the St. Lawrence Seaway past the Thousand Islands, and then finally ending up in Cornwall, Ontario, where we took our boat out. In the first episode, I recounted how we spent a couple nights in Montreal and then departed, heading up the Ottawa River as far as Hawkesbury on our first major travel day. We stayed at the Hawkesbury town dock. Now is the beginning of episode 2. Our plan is to leave the Hawkesbury dock and head west upriver at least 40 miles for the day. That away to the left on the screen. However, we did encounter some difficulties during this day. It's Thursday morning. The two trawlers are staying. The other cruiser, I think they're heading back towards, I forget now, Montreal. There's a cultural center here. Interesting display, a NATO Jeep. Hawkesbury is a bilingual town on the Ottawa River. It's across the river from Grenville, Quebec. This Ontario town, as I mentioned, is very bilingual, and this park celebrates that. This has been a good place to stay. It was $35. What your $35 gets you is a very nice place to stay, especially in the current. What it did not get you was access to the washrooms 24 hours a day. It's just, I think, pretty much when the daylight hours, actually even less than daylight. I think 6 p.m. the washrooms were open. When you go to brush your teeth, no, they're not. It would be a vandalism thing. That it's just not manned for that. And here it is about 20 after 8. They're locked as well. There's a boat ramp here. This would be very, very tricky. Someone who stopped by and talked last night, and there are quite a few people just walking their dogs and willing to talk, said this is unusual. This is a high level right now, and this flow really isn't quite like that. So we go out, and we'll be crabbing out against the current, and then that way we hope to get to Petrie Island tonight, which let's see, 80 minus 44, or is it 90 minus 44? So we've got like 46 miles to try and go. We could try and go this way. There are some shallows. I really don't want to pick my way through a few marked rocks and things like that, or shallows, where there's some 3 and 4 foot depths there, and then you get to deeper on the other side. We did a 180 turn off the dock, and the maybe 1.5 2 mile an hour current carried us out to the main channel, which point we turned up into about a 4 mile an hour current at that point at the narrows under the bridge. It was quite strong. As the river widened out, it got a little weaker, and we said goodbye to Hawkesbury, Quebec on our right side, the hilly Quebec contours, and then the flatter contours of Ontario on our left or port side. We had very little traffic to worry about, but we did have the occasional bit of debris. This one floating log was something. Some things looked like debris. It was just floating foam. We encountered a bit of that. Here is our GPS indicating about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Not too cold, not too warm. It's 27th of June. Depths, you'll notice a depth there, 27 feet. During this trip on the Ottawa River, we ranged up to 240 feet. There has been development here and farming for over 200 years.
Beautiful scenery along the Ottawa River, the Ontario side. Now the Quebec side. Beautiful sides. Ottawa River.
You can hear the motor. We're just about 4 miles from Lefebvre. It started to run very rough. We stopped it. I switched tanks back, and Anyhow, it's not running quite right, so we're heading to Lefebvre right now. We'll take the cowl off. It's like it's running on 3 cylinders. The slight misfire got worse and worse as we approached Lefebvre. At one point it was pretty severe. We didn't know what was happening. I got closer to shore and I was aiming for the Lefebvre. They call it marina, but it's a gas dock, public dock. As we got closer, it was worse. I thought, well, I'm going to try and hit the ferry dock. That wasn't going to work. The engine's going to quit. So back there about 2 miles, we started to have some troubles. You can see the wind really strong. Current. There's a ferry going back and forth. This is Lefebvre, Ontario over here. We basically ran to this dock and basically ran it in. The motor died when I tried to reverse. We just, fortunately, good bumpers there, and we managed to get control of it. The owners let us park here. He says no problem, get it sorted out. I've called the insurance company. They're getting the name of a tow company. We just need to tow this thing about half a mile or less over the other side of the ferry dock is a ramp, and we'll have to get an hour or so to Cornwall to pick up our truck and trailer. Taking this apart, I thought, oh, it's just missing maybe, but there is oil in the front, and when I tip it out up, it's running out, and the oil level seems kind of high and the oil seems kind of thin. So what I believe happened is a gasket's gone. We got water into the oil. This thing had started to smoke. It was rough, but we managed to run on like 3 cylinders, and it got rougher, almost not running and smoking, and that was just about a quarter mile, half mile at the most there, and we just made her to here. So the end of this trip for right now, and we'll see if it's the end of this motor or not. I'd kind of like a new one. I can be a real pessimist, but fortunately Chris, whose house and dock that we were at, he said he's the optimist, he's the businessman. He says, hey, I think I've got an answer. I know a mechanic. Let's see if he's nearby. He lives nearby. Turned out the guy happened to be home for lunch that day, and he had some time to spare. He came out right after his lunch, diagnosed it. Fuel pump. It's putting fuel into the oil. The question was, where do we get the parts? It's just before a holiday weekend. It's a Thursday. It's in the afternoon. What can we do? I had a couple suggestions for us to call. We called. Fortunately, it was actually in stock, this fuel pump, kind of expensive, but it was just back down in Hawkesbury where we came from.
Hey, old hobo, what are you doing?
Okay, right now I'm playing the part of the optimist. Now I know the fuel pump was the problem. It burst a seal. It was blasting lots of fuel into the oil. And the crankcase just didn't have enough room for the pistons to go up and down. And I was told lubrication-wise that the thing would be okay. He said you shouldn't score anything. After all, 2 cycles run on a mixture of gas and oil for lubrication. I had replaced this fuel pump 2 years before when I got the motor. It is the one that failed. It was a cheap Amazon product. Now I've got the genuine mercury article. It cost an arm and a leg, but that's great. While I was at it, I got the oil change kit, which was filter and seals and 3 liters of genuine mercury oil, all told around $700 Canadian. But I can do this myself, and I started on it right now, and you can't drop anything. The only thing I couldn't do right now because of the wind and waves was the actual oil change. It wasn't safe to pull the thing up close to the rocks in the shallows. Failing leak pump. This is what a failing fuel pump is like. See the fuel coming through when I pump it? It's leaking through, and that goes right into the crankcase. This here is actuated by a lever, I think that's off the camshaft, that runs the pump, but the gaskets in there are, or membranes are shot. There are 2 bolts, and then there are 2 hoses attached with special zip ties. Fortunately, I had the special curved head zip ties that conform to a round hose. Okay, this is complete. All lines attached. All that's left to do now is change the filter on the side, and there's a drain for the oil on the bottom. So we get rid of all the nasty oil that's mixed with gasoline. After supper, the wind and waves subsided enough. I felt comfortable to change the oil in the shallows. I stood on a rock or cement ledge knee deep and managed to get all the oil into a bucket with not a single spill. And Chris was good enough to dispose of it at his shop the next day. He said no problem with that. Test ran the motor. It was good, and we were set for a good night's rest. We'll talk about the next day, which is a very eventful day. Couple minutes out of Chris's dock, and we were at the Lefebvre ferry dock. We passed that. Another couple minutes, we were at the Lefebvre marina. We stopped, we got fuel, and actually used their washroom there. We actually met one couple there. They were fueling up just before us, and they had a dog named Peanut. At least a week and a half later, Janet recognized the dog and said, "Hey, is your dog named Peanut?" And the people were kind of astounded, but it's funny, you catch up with different people you've met earlier in the trip, later in the trip, if they're taking the same route. You get to recognize different boats and different people and make their acquaintance. We left the Lefebvre gas dock behind. Nice surprise. Reasonable price. I think it was $1.77 a liter. We just refilled the 6-gallon tank, topped up to 12. So we're all gassed up. We got oil in the motor now. It's running smoothly. We got it, it was running a little better. We got to the edge of plane, or we were on a heavy plane when we just tried it out, but like 10 miles an hour. So just not quite breaking it into it, but that's okay. So here we are, Ottawa bound. Today we'll just go perhaps to the Petrie Islands and anchor. Our other friends, they went by. Actually, we felt their wake before, just as we were getting ready, actually making coffee, and they didn't spill any water on the stove, but we felt their wake. They gave us a message. They're pushing it all the way. They have a spot on a dock in Ottawa. Always keep your head up and watch for floating debris or debris that may be stuck on the bottom. These branches and so on are released from the shore during times of high water. This appears to be the town of Montebello. And again, we're looking ahead. There's a nice cove in there, and we should see the Fairmont Hotel, which is supposed to be an impressive structure. Okay, this is what we're seeing of the Fairmont Hotel. I thought it was a bit taller, but it's a large sprawling structure, and the cove of the marina is quite protected. I think the gas dock is right there on the end, just at the entrance. We had planned to possibly get gas there, but then we saw Lefebvre had it at their marina. We did a two-way comparison of speeds at a constant RPM, and we figure that the current in this wide open area is about 0.8 of a mile per hour, so 0.8 approximately. There's a little bit of traffic on the river here. It's a Friday. Fishing boat, pontoon boat. We're coming up to Ile à Rosen, and if we had gone behind it, there's a channel leads to Papineauville, or we can go just beyond this. So there's another channel just before Grand Presqu'île, and you could cut in and go up further to Papineauville. It's actually a dead-end sort of section of river. It looks like it would be a great sheltered place to go if it was really really crappy. That's the Ile Rosen. There's a channel behind it, but here's a big wide open channel. Papineauville is down there to the right on the Quebec side. This is Presqu'île, Grand Presqu'île. That is Ile Rosen, and this is Grand Presqu'île, and Papineauville is right there. And you can see this is the river here, but over here is like a dead river, and it doesn't go back to the main channel, but there's depth. There's 22 foot, so there's stuff there. The passage behind Presqu'île here into Papineauville is pretty restricted. That's all just grass, very, 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 very shallow. But there's red marker for the main channel. There's a red, red, red. There's a green, green, green. So it goes in, slightly shifts, gets a little wider. Then you can go like so. Okay, we stopped the boat. You can just hear a light wind. Just wanted to stop because every spot seems a little unique. We just have our motor idling in the back there. There's a lot of thin water over there and thin islands towards Quebec. Yep, we are about 10 miles from downtown Ottawa. So here's a farm. When I see these farms on the water, I wonder how many hundred years has this been a family farm? How old is the house? There has been farming here since the 1700s, I believe. So, hey, you're a farmer, you have a boat. Oh, look at what the old hobo made for himself to eat.
Oh no, the babushka.
Yeah, she's cold.
I forgot my hat.
Yeah, she forgot it. She forgot a hat, yes. It's a little brunch on the way. This is Windsor Bay. It would be a good anchorage, and just beyond that is the South Nation River. We might just investigate the mouth of it or go in a little bit. It's a possible place I had marked as an anchorage if we needed it. Well, you can see Papineauville there, and how close after Papineauville we have Windsor Bay and then Wendover, and then we turn down to South National River, and our objective is that bay at the very end. Okay, from the main river here, just before Wendover, we turn to port, that is to the left, and we thread our way through the shallows there, follow the marked channel. We did see a number of people fishing in here. There are shallow waters off to the sides near the shore, especially the left is a little more wild. There are housing developments on the right. We're making our way to the end. There's a large circular pool. Yeah, here are some of the nice homes. Saw some nice examples there. This is fairly close to Ottawa, so it's a great place to have a home that's not too far from the city, too far from work. As we come up, we'll come up to an old railway bridge. There is a marina here and some marine services for boats. You see a boat yard. The depth posted through here is like 6 feet, the contours say, but we're getting 20 feet going through. So I guess it scours out pretty well during the spring. That must be an old survey. Now we're into this pool. This area off to the right is called Jessop's Falls. I don't know where the falls are. Beyond this point, our chart plotter had no depth information. The river was narrower, but it appeared navigable. Especially looking at boats and other things on aerial photographs. However, we had our objective of getting to Ottawa, so we returned to the Ottawa River. Almost immediately after we got back onto the Ottawa River, we had the opportunity to get off the main channel and go on a back channel behind Ile du Bay and Ile Fer à Cheval, and we thought, oh, this would be quieter water and a little more interesting. Okay, we went over to the main channel into a secondary channel. It's on the Quebec side of Ile du Bay, and it's just a little calmer and rustic.
We were going down a little river here on the Quebec side, and there's a beaver dam right over there.
For the most part, it was a quieter detour off the main channel. But of course, other people are there and they enjoy recreation on the water as well. Wakeboarding is pretty popular, and the wakes are something that we have to watch for ourselves. This small gap here, that's approaching Rockland. This is a pretty wide open section of river. It's a beautiful day. Poofy clouds. And as you can hear when I turn this way, wind. There is a gap over here you can go up. I don't believe that goes through, but I'll have to check. I'll put a note there what this island is. I forget right now. Okay, we're aiming. There's marker right up there. This is a narrow gap here. Rockland right there. There's a ramp and marina, or at least dock right here. Canadian Tire is closed. Gas is closed, like half a mile, 1 kilometer or so. Tim Hortons, McDonald's. This was a potential stop I had mapped out, but we have no need of those things at present, so we won't stop here. There is a marina of some sort, or a private dock facility around the corner to the left as well. We're proceeding on to Ottawa. Well, after we got out from behind the islands, back onto the main channel, of course, we went through the, I'll call it the Clarence Rockland Gap, Dumoulin Park, and so on, uneventful. But we weren't ready for what was next at Cumberland. Yeah, we deal with ferry crossings. The guys here, they thought it was too close, so they stopped. And that's probably true. The cable does get pulled up, and now they're waiting after because the cable has to drop. So they'll go shortly.
This is on the Ottawa River. There's 4 ferries operating here. We're zigzagging between them along with the speedboats. The ferries load and unload vehicles very quickly, and then they just go. So we've crisscrossed in between 4 of them on the Ottawa River here.
Immediately to starboard, past the ferries, is another potential anchorage.
This is the Rivière du Livre, and it's just upstream from the Cumberland ferries.
A little farther upstream from the Cumberland ferries was Petrie Island, and that was the proposed destination for the day. The one end, the east end of the island, has a nice crescent-shaped area that's the beach, and it's used for recreation and so on. The whole island is a park. Behind the island is a river, an old river channel, and it actually would make a very nice anchorage. We still had a lot of daylight, and I knew there was a very nice place in Ottawa, so we continued another hour past Petrie Island. We passed on that anchorage, and we said we're going to Ottawa. These are pictures of some homes on the North Shore, I believe, in this area. No particular order. I'm not sure the exact location. Things got jumbled up, but there's some nice homes. There are surprisingly few docks in terms of boats, and I don't know if that's due to ice, the busyness of the river, the roughness. I'm not really too sure. We did see our second airplane on the river. It's pulled up on shore there. But here is something interesting we saw. Here's the location of it, and here it is. It's this giant, I'll call it can, that's what you often call markers, and it's right between Upper Duck and Lower Duck Island, the little channel that leads out of it, right by the by a green marker. Does anybody know what it is? I'd almost say it was an old boiler or obstruction, but it looks the way it's leaning. It's with the current, and it's actually a gigantic mooring ball. So what is this object? Is it something historic? Let me know in the comments if you could. This is Rockcliffe over here. That's the Rockcliffe boathouse. You can see sailboats and so on. Boy, if my memory serves me correct, I think they serve the public, that you can use it as a restaurant. I'll check that, and I'll put a comment in the video about that. Up ahead, around the left, we start to curve towards Gatineau on that side, then Hull and Ottawa, and of course the Rideau Falls and Ottawa, the Parliament of Canada. Continued past the NCC River House and up to the Rockcliffe Boat House, which was on our port or left side. And it is an historic building. I believe it's members for the docking privileges, but the gas dock is supposed to be good, and also the restaurant. If you visit, you can dock there. Otherwise, it is private. Across directly from it is one of many marinas and docks, Outboard, Le Pirate. So there are a number of places to check out over on the Gatineau side. That would be the north or Quebec side. We continue ahead, and straight ahead is the Macdonald-Cartier Bridge. It links Quebec to Ontario, and it's really a symbol linking the French to the English side of Canada. Macdonald being English, of course. Cartier, Jacques Cartier, representative name for the Quebecois. As we continue south, we come to Governor Bay, and right at the corner of Governor Bay is the official residence of the Canadian Prime Minister. 24 Sussex Drive is the address if you want to know. It is not occupied and hasn't been for a few years. It needs a whole whack of renovation, evidently. Right next door is a very nice place. Looks a lot nicer and better kept up. It's the French ambassador's home. Next to the French embassy, the Rideau Falls. Rideau means curtain in French, and these are curtain falls, and that's what impressed Samuel de Champlain when he saw it, and early settlers named it the Rideau Falls. Here's some footage to go along with the previously described information. Outboard Marina to the right, Rockcliffe to the left. We're going around a bend, approximately southwest at this point, but turning to the south, that's the town of Hull, straight ahead, I believe. As we come around, we'll come up to Governor's Bay on the left, and then there'll be, you won't see it, but the Prime Minister's residence and the French embassy. And Rideau Falls is coming into sight, the Curtain Falls. There are 3 discrete areas of falls. I think way back when it was one long thing, about 200 yards long. We didn't get too close to the Rideau Falls, but we took some pictures. Then we headed towards the Macdonald-Cartier Bridge just to peek through to the other side. That's where we'll be the very next day entering up the locks beside the Parliament buildings into the Rideau Canal system. We looped around and we got up to our exit there, the discharge or Décharge Lac Limy. It's basically Lake Limy discharge, and we went down this narrow creek, and we had a very private anchorage that night. A very private anchorage indeed, very nice. There's some green space on the other side of that bridge. I think we saw someone with a canoe once or twice, and there will be some more pictures in episode 3 the next morning when we departed for the Rideau Canal, our ultimate destination. Interesting fact, this anchorage is approximately 3 kilometers as the crow flies from the Parliament buildings of Canada and the entrance to the Rideau Canal. I appreciate any comments or corrections you may have. This is being published 3 months after the actual happenings, so please like and subscribe also if you would, and you can get the rest of the remaining series, and be sure to watch some of the previous content on the Trent Severn Canal, the St. Johns River in Florida, and other things about the Erie Hobo and its reconstruction.